Hello everyone, how you going? Welcome to Weird Places, the Bay of Fundy. Now, I've certainly heard a few random things about the Bay of Fundy, but really, I know that it has random tides and kind of incredible landscape, but I just want to know a bit more, so here we go.
On Canada's eastern coast, tucked between the provinces of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, lies the Bay of Fundy, a 270-kilometer-long body of water that's home to one of the strangest daily occurrences on Earth. It has the largest tidal range in the world. While the average difference between high tide and low tide is about 1 meter throughout the world, water levels in parts of this bay rise and fall by 14 meters.
Damn, I just want to quickly have a look at that little bit of a map there. So as I now know from him just saying it, it's a 250-kilometer long stretch of water that I didn't know was that big, but just look at that. It goes from 6 meters at kind of the minimum all the way up to the end, up to 15 meters. Honestly, I know I've said it before, but I just do not understand, or I cannot visualize what a 15-meter tide looks like. Or really, not even just looks like, but just how the hell does anyone live with that? Because you're basically having, I don't know, a tsunami's worth of water just come and go every single day, twice a day. And so anyway, I guess you just kind of want to be living more to the south than the north if you don't like water.
Over the course of 6 hours and 13 minutes, the average time between each high and low tide in the bay, tides move more than 160 billion metric tons of water. That's more than the combined flow of all the world's rivers put together. So what exactly is going on here? And is there a way to harness all that energy? We know that the gravitational pull of the moon, and to a lesser extent the sun, is responsible for creating the tides. But the daily phenomenon in the Bay of Fundy results from a perfect confluence of conditions that exaggerates the tide's effects, particularly the bay's size and shape, with a heavy dose of really excellent timing.
Wait, so the size and shape, high tide 2001, low tide 2002. I mean, that definitely helps to try and put it into perspective about how much water is moving, because I know that he said it moves more water, and it makes sense because it's such a massive amount of, well, it's so wide and so long. But really, besides it just being kind of numbers on the page, you cannot really visualize, besides doing something like this, 160 billion tons of water.
The Bay of Fundy is essentially a huge earthen basin, and any liquid in the basin will rhythmically slosh back and forth once it's set in motion. It's called sashing. There's a whole word for it, sometimes oscillation, and it happens in most confined bodies of water, like lakes and bays, but the speed at which liquid oscillates depends on how long and deep the basin is that's holding it.
Wow, because it's so massive, I can only imagine he's meaning like it kind of rocks back and forward. Is that what he's saying? I mean, I didn't know that that happened in every single thing. Like, are we saying that that confined body of water, that little bit of a dam there, is kind of oscillating back and forward, even though it doesn't look like, it looks like a mirror? I really have no idea, but no, I can understand if you kind of take that principle of a little dam oscillating and then put it to a 250 by, what is it, like 80-kilometer wide stretch of ocean, then you're pretty much going to have the largest tide in the world.
The speed at which liquid oscillates depends on how long and deep the basin is that's holding it. As water oscillates, the surface will rise at one end of the basin, then at the other side, and then back again. In a bathtub, you may have noticed, it takes a few seconds for water to oscillate in a single cycle, but in the Bay of Fundy, it takes about 12.5 hours, which coincides almost exactly with the cycle of the tides, as the waters of the Atlantic Ocean enter and leave the bay. So essentially, the natural oscillation of Fundy's water corresponds with and is reinforced by the tides. The effect is a lot like giving an extra couple of pushes to a kid on a swing. One push from behind when they're swinging forward, and an additional nudge in the opposite direction when they're headed back.
Well, I just have to bring it back to this right here, because the natural oscillation of Fundy's water corresponds with and is reinforced by the tides. I mean, if you had no context around their kind of magnitude of what we're actually talking about here, you'd probably go, okay, sure. But when you actually go, holy moly, that's so much water that has to move. I'd love to know kind of the amount of flow rate, like how fast is this water moving to be able to move 180 billion tons of water in 12 hours, I guess, or maybe 6 hours? I can't even remember anymore. Either way, the fact that it's even within like a week span, even within a day, is just ridiculous. I mean, I know that we're dealing with just massive amounts of volume, but it's just crazy. Like, I wonder how many fish and different aquatic life, like what kind of other systems are just tied to this entire tide? Because, for instance, you have in the Bay of Fundy, the cycle takes about 12.5 hours, and I can only assume that that's kind of going to coincide also with feeding times for sharks or fish or whatever it may be. And that's just not even including, I can only assume, that all the atmospheric conditions that change and just give water out the mountains and all these different things, Honestly, Canada just keeps surprising me over and over and over again, between the lake on an island, on a lake on an island, on a lake, I think it was, on an island, I don't even know. Either way, things like that, where you just have these really kind of specifically random things that that are occurring all over Canada. 2 to 3 million lakes, yeah, sure, tick that box. A lake, or like I said, on an island on a lake, tick that box. A 15-meter tide, yeah, sure, we'll take that one too. And I mean, yes, to be honest, I guess Australia does have a few things of its own. I'm fairly sure we actually have the second biggest tide in the world, but either way, the entire thing, Canada is very special, but we also seem to share a lot of things with Australia, I guess.
And the shape of the bay helps amplify this effect as well. Fundy's topography is kind of like a funnel, becoming both narrower and shallower in its northern portions, which helps force the water higher onto the shore. Now, the movement of such huge volumes of water conveys an incredible amount of energy, and slowly, we're learning how to harness that energy thanks to a tidal power plant in the Bay of Fundy that's one of only 3 such plants in the world.
There we go, Annapolis Royal Generating Station. I wonder how it works, because that just kind of looks like a dam in terms of what we're seeing here. And I'm not entirely sure how that would work, because the only tidal generation I've ever seen is kind of just like a wind farm underwater that as the water kind of passes through, it turns the turbine just as wind would, and then as it comes back, it turns it back the other way, and that's how it generates. And so I would love to know, maybe they're running kind of like a hydroelectric, because you're moving so much water that you could probably do something like that.
Thanks to a tidal power plant in the Bay of Fundy that's one of only 3 such plants in the world. The power plant consists mainly of a kind of gated dam called a barrage that's built across an inlet of the bay. When the tide comes in, the gates let the water flow into a huge reservoir. At high tide, the gates close, and that stored water is run through a system of turbines that spin to generate electricity. But the barrage setup...
So it is kind of like a hydroelectric in terms of you're just trapping the water, but instead of having to pump it back up a mountain or anything like that, you're just actually using the tide, and so it's even a more efficient kind of use. I mean, I can only imagine it's not as effective given the fact that they only say 3. I mean, surely otherwise everyone would be kind of having them, but either way, the fact that you can use that water, oh, that's incredible.
But the barrage setup is pretty inefficient, and a host of marine wildlife, including a couple of whales, have been known to get trapped in the reservoir. So the next generation of tidal energy in the Bay of Fundy will include tidal turbines anchored to the ocean floor. They'll use the movement of flowing water to generate electricity in the same way that wind turbines use moving air. Because
of course he's actually now talking about this. I mean, I love how I just talked about it and then he talks about it just to kind of back me up. But no, I just want to take it back because I didn't really even think about the amount of marine life that would get either just kind of sucked into there or even just kind of go into there because there's now a new reservoir and water area that they are generally able to go in. But I would love to know, I guess they said one of the inlets, I'm fairly sure.
Called a barrage that's built across an inlet of the bay.
One of the inlets of the bay, and so I wonder if that's kind of one of the arms of the bay he's talking about in terms of inlets, you know, it has the main thing, because imagine if you did the main thing, you did the entire Bay of Fundy was just a massive reservoir. That'd just be a ridiculous amount of energy and water. I mean, I don't think we'd be able to harness that much energy. And to be honest, I don't even know if we'd really ever want to build a dam across the entire thing, because I feel as though that would just ruin the entire ecosystem that I was talking about before. But at least we can actually just try and do things like this, which aren't too bad, and then hopefully just move on to things like this, which I can only hope are better for marine life as well in terms of trafficking them and they don't spin too fast is kind of the idea that I'm worried about.
So the next generation of tidal energy in the Bay of Fundy will include tidal turbines anchored to the ocean floor. They'll use the movement of flowing water to generate electricity in the same way that wind turbines use moving air. But because water is about 800 times more dense than air, tidal turbines don't have to spin as fast. Since this whole phenomenon of the Bay of Fundy is driven mostly by the gravitational action of the moon, you might think of this useful byproduct of the tides as lunar power. In any case, it's just one more way in which the world is uniquely awesome.
Well, I just want to take it to here because, yeah, I guess it would be lunar power. You know, nothing else is really powering the tides. The Earth certainly isn't kind of doing that. I mean, I did hear if there was something about the, I don't even know the Big Bay anymore. Whatever the Big Bay is, and it has like its own gravitational thing. But really considering the fact that we have solar power and now we can kind of have lunar power as well, we might as well just keep expanding. What else can we get? Because if we can just keep kind of grabbing all these different components of power and just literally just free limitless power that we're kind of being given by all these celestial bodies, then why not? And then also when he talks about the density of water.
Because water is about 800 times more dense than air, tidal turbines don't have to spin as fast.
I wonder why that is. Is that because it's physically you can put a bigger brake on the entire turbine, so in terms of the gearing, so it can generate the same amount of power but not have to spin as fast because you're actually just getting the force of the water? I wonder how that actually works. Because in theory it sounds great, you know, if you just physically have to move less to generate the same amount, or hopefully they're just as efficient, maybe they're not, either way. But I guess either way, as long as Canada's just kind of getting the engineers just going, how can we just use this incredible resource that we have at our disposal and all of our other things just to kind of create just unlimited power for us and just unlimited power for the world, maybe if you did enough of it, then really as long as you have the marine and environmental side down pat, then I see no downside with the entire thing. Alrighty then, well that is going to be the end of that video, Bendo. I feel as though I've just covered every little thing, and I loved how I was going, oh, I wonder about this, and then he just proceeded to kind of say the exact same thing that I said. And hey, I certainly don't feel as though that's a bad thing. You know, I just came into this video just going, holy moly, just what is this thing? And there were so many different questions that I have still surrounding the Bay of Fundy. Like, I'd love to see a video or a time lapse of kind of how it goes up and down in all these different areas. is. And I would also love to know just how different people are affected by the entire thing. Do people kind of just get completely scared by it because it's just this absolutely unstoppable force of water, or do they just use it to kind of trade routes and all these different things, you know? I mean, I can only assume that it would be an engineering nightmare, you know, you have to make bridges that at low tide would look just stupidly high, but then at high tide would be nearly underwater if you're going all the way to the north side at 15-meter tides. And so, like I said, there are just so many other things to unpack with the Bay of Fundy, so I'm going to have to check out some more things, but also just let me know if you have any kind of just facts or figures or videos that you want me to check out, because honestly, just looking at this entire thing here, it is just an insane kind of area, and honestly, like I said, Canada just keeps delivering on all of these different aspects. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to do the YouTube algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then maybe you want to check out just any other ones we've done. You know, we've done so many Canadian videos and just international videos as a whole. Or hey, maybe you even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.